Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 74 of the Solosaurus podcast. I'm Michael Eckenfels.
And I think I'm still Martin Gonzalez.
Why wouldn't you be?
I may have been implanted by a facehugger, and I'm going. And then you're going to have a shocking surprise at breakfast tomorrow.
Bro, you're straight up not having a good time. Okay, if that happens. Today, if you can't figure it out, we are talking about Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core, a solo cooperative sci-fi space combat game based on the classic film Aliens, which I think came out in 1986. Boy,
Wow.
I'm old. This game is designed by Andrew Hutt and published by Gale Force 9 last year in 2020.
It's a medium complexity game for 1 to 6 players where you control your squad of colonial marines on a map using miniatures that you assemble. Hey, much more on those miniatures ahead.
Oh boy, you guys are going to hear about that from both of us. So anyway, this podcast is brought to you by Stone Valley Games. This podcast is brought to you.
Sorry.
I'll just keep it in there. That's all right. It's kind of funny. This podcast is brought to you by Stone Valley Games, your friendly distant game store. Serious voice now, folks. Check them out at stonevalleygames.com. It's a great shop. As we said, great games for solo players. We invite you to go check them out. They're always adding new content in the storefront. And it's, of course, important, as always, to support a small, family-run, solo-friendly game store.
Hey, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Guess how many Stone Valley Game stickers I have on my work laptop?
6.
Well, no, 2. I've had one for the longest time. Because Eric keeps sending me stickers, so I want, and he's got a new design, and they're all like nice and shiny holographic effect stickers. So I put them. He sends for the folks listening here. He sends us stuff in every shipment of games, just like nice. And so now I have two different sticker designs of Stone Valley Games on my laptop.
He sent me one. I think we talked about this in the last episode, and I said something about I had never gotten one before, and he sent me one with a note saying, "Here you go. I realized you didn't have gotten one yet." So I don't have any place to put it, to be honest with you, but I'll figure it out. I'm gonna definitely hold on to it because you never know.
Don't you have a car that you can put a bumper sticker on?
Let's move on. Okay, so. Yeah, I got a scratch I can cover up.
Oh, had to bring that one up again. Didn't want to open that wound. Sorry.
Nah, that's all right. It's not a big deal. It's the joys of modern living. What can I say? The news. This solo news segment is brought to you by TableFor1.me, where the Solosaurus podcast exclusively gets its one-player game news. Thanks as always to Frederick Schultz of TableFor1.me for his ongoing efforts to bring us solo gaming news. By the way, you can also read his solo gaming news blog on Board Game Geek. We, as always, will add that link to the show notes below in the Libsyn display there. So the first one is called V Commandos. The popular 1 to 4 player game of stealth and covert operations during World War II from publisher Triton Noir is returning to Kickstarter in 2021. This will include a reprint of the series as well as new and improved artwork, deluxe component upgrades, and even plastic miniatures. I'm in plastic minis. I'm all about that. According to a recent news article published by Dicebreaker, the upcoming Kickstarter campaign will also mark the unveiling of V Commandos Ghost, the most ambitious operation of the entire series thus far. Martin, what do you think of that?
I've never played V Commandos, but it's a pretty popular solitaire game. Also, when I hear the phrase stealth and covert operations, I think of Metal Gear Solid, and one of my favorite video games from the 90s. Was it the 90s or early 2000s? I forget now.
Might be 90s. I think the first one came out actually in the early 90s.
Was it? Oh yeah. Well, the NES one, sure. I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid. Yeah, back in my day. But yeah, so I'm very, very interested to check out V Commandos. And I hope that it has, I'm looking at the box cover here on tablefor1.me, and it looks like it's got that, sort of caper, like World War II caper film, like Force 10 from Navarone kind of thing going on,
Yep.
where
Yep.
each member of the team has a specialty, and here's a demolitions expert, and here's a blah, blah. I'm hoping it's that kind of thing. Maybe I'm just building this whole thing up in my head, but it looks
Maybe.
interesting to me.
It does to me too. I love World War II games, to be totally honest
Hmm.
with you. And I'm
Hmm.
not a fan, though, of stealth type games like Assassin's Creed, that kind of thing. Video games, computer
Hmm.
games. I don't like that. I don't know why. I just don't. But board games are fine. It's just a different experience for me. So, and it has a seal of excellence from the Dice Tower on it. I see from that shot there. So that might mean it's
That's
even more so
something.
to reason to get it. Yeah.
All right. Next news item we have is Vienna Connection. This is an upcoming 1 to 5 player cooperative game by designers Ignacy Shevicek and Jakub Pojti. Learning a lesson from the last time we had to pronounce complex names in the news section. I actually, in our show
Mhm.
outline, I spelled them out phonetically. So I'm so proud of myself. I'm going to say those names again: Ignacy Shevicek and Jakub Pojti. And from publisher Portal Games, Vienna Connection takes the same system used to good effect in the previous game, Detective: A Modern Crime board game, which I enjoy very much. And this time, this tells a Cold War espionage story. Set during the Cold War in the late 1970s, players take on the role of highly trained covert CIA agents sent to Europe with the mission of investigating the death of an American citizen found murdered by local police in Vienna. Over the course of 4 missions, players will conduct secret operations, gather intel, utilize local assets, and decipher classified messages from CIA headquarters. Vienna Connection is scheduled for retail release later this year in May, but it's now available for pre-order from Portal Games. So, Michael, what do you think of Vienna Connection?
I've not yet jumped on the the train, whatever you want to call it, for for the detective system. I've almost
Mm-hmm.
bought it a few times, and I think the reason why I haven't is because I've been concerned about replayability. I mean, once you solve a case, that's pretty much it, right? I mean, what are your
Yes.
thoughts on that? I'm not quite sure how that works.
I really like the Detective Modern Crime board game. I'm a
Okay.
fan of this type of board game. There are others in the genre, Chronicles of Crime,
Hmm.
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and those types of things. And I think for my opinion, for my money, Detective Modern Crime is the best of the bunch. Um, because it's very detailed, it's more modern, and the technology integration. They have a website that is thematic and really supports. It's a resource for you and helps you and keeps track of the facts you've uncovered during your investigations. It just really makes you. It immerses you into it for a solo detective game. I think Detective Modern Crime is the best out there, and um, as far as replayability goes, you are right. There are 5 cases in the main box, in the core box, and once you've gone through them, then that's it because you've solved the crimes. But
Right.
um, you they're also not easy. So you get a score. Basically, at the end of the case, you have to answer a series of questions. And based on your detecting, you either get the right answer or wrong answer. And then they give you a score based on your answers to the questions. And so far, I've struggled to even get like 50% on these cases. Like
Hmm.
they're not easy,
Okay.
so, but they're a lot of fun though. I do recommend it.
It's
Highly recommend it, actually.
it sounds like too. You got to think of it in terms of enjoyment time versus the dollar you spend. So if it costs what 40, $50, if it gives you
Mhm.
20 hours of enjoyment, there's your cost is what $2 an hour, or I'm terrible at math. Yeah, $2, $3 an hour. That's worth it. I mean, in the
Yeah.
scheme of things. So I should pick that up sometime. I think I'll do that. So that looks
Yep.
pretty cool. I like
Plus,
the Cold War theme to it as well.
oh, I love the Cold War theme. I'm
Yeah,
the type
for
of
sure.
person that you slap a Cold War theme on a game, and I'm instantly interested. which
There you
has
go.
led me astray several times. Is like, they're not all very good, but anyway.
Right, man. Unfortunately. Okay. Our third one is called Michal, and Orkney Saga, uh, a gritty game. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Were you going to pronounce it correctly for me? Did you
No,
get this one
I've always
phonetically?
pronounced
Okay.
it. I've always pronounced it Micho, but it very well be Michal. I've never actually heard it pronounced by anybody. So yeah,
There it
you may
is. Okay.
show me more. Oh, I'm sorry.
But here we go. Cardboard Comedy Club coming at you, ladies and gentlemen. So we got a gritty game here of hand management and survival for 1 to 2 players in Micho. I'll call it Micho. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. You alone or a friend play a 12th century Jarl trapped in the chambered tomb of Michal on Orkney, which is an island, I believe, in the United Kingdom, back in AD 1150. You must carefully manage your dwindling resources of food, food, health, and cards remaining in your draw deck in a desperate bid to escape the tomb with your life. Michaud is designed by Lee Broderick and published by Dragon Dawn Productions. Martin, what are your thoughts on Michal?
So I'm interested in this one because I'm definitely getting an Unbroken vibe from this game. It's survival. You're trapped in a catacomb or some type of labyrinth, and your supplies are dwindling, and you're trying to get out. And that's definitely the setup for the game, a very popular solo game called Unbroken as well. So that's appealing to me. I know a little bit more about the backstory of this game. This started life in one of the Board Game Geek solitaire print and play design contests, probably from back in 2016, I want to say. This game has been around quite a while, and it's nice to see that it's finally getting professionally published. So that's kind of cool.
That is cool. Yeah, I have Unbroken. I've just never played it. I got it for Christmas just a couple of months ago. I just never messed with it. But you like Unbroken, I take it. So this looks like it might be good too.
It's a pretty good game. Did you back the Kickstarter, or did you buy it on retail?
Oh no! Oh, I got it for Christmas. I got it straight from the family for Christmas. So yeah,
Gotcha.
I've never backed a Kickstarter. I probably never will. Not because I can't, just because I'm not allowed to. So, dude, if I had control of my credit card and access to Kickstarter, it'd be a bad time.
It would
$300 all in. I'm down. Yeah.
It's we're in the same boat. My wife gets a. I don't really back Kickstarters, but I will like go all in for $1. But even those, like as soon as they fund, my wife gets a push notification on her phone. She's like, "What's this Kickstarter?" And I'm like, "It's $1, honey. Come on." I'm just trying to show support.
Yeah, I think I get the same treatment there. I do P500s with GMT, which is where they don't charge you until the game is actually at the printer and done and ready to ship. Then they charge you, and I'm fine with that. But that tends to sneak up on you too. Having a good day, la la la. Oh, look, you got an email. Hey, you got a game coming. Wait, what? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That was 9 months ago. Okay. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on.
Let's move on. That was the news.
This is our review now of Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core, a cooperative tactical squad level miniatures game. As I said, designed by Andrew Hott, and the art is by Jose David Lanza Sebrian and Victor Pesch.
Great job.
Gale Force 9, 1 to 6 play. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm working on my pronunciation skills, and I'm probably still totally wrong. So this game is actually is about medium weight. According to BGG, it's a 2.78. 2.78. Listen to me. Like I'm 2.78, mate. It's okay. I'm sorry. I just offended a bunch of people there. Playable in about what's that?
No, I actually think the complexity score is a little bit on the high side there. I would say it's probably around 2.5, actually.
Yeah, and we'll get into why we think that here momentarily.
Yes.
I think I know what you're going to say. So, in Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core, or I'll just call it Aliens. I think we should just call it Aliens because that's quite a few. That's quite a few letters, and we get paid by the letter. So, I'm kidding. We don't get paid. You control a squad of 6 colonial Marines as they investigate the colony on LV-426, otherwise known as Hadley's Hope, where the infestation of aliens occurred in the movie of the same name. You choose your squad, load them up with equipment, and then you play through 6 separate missions, or you can play a campaign with 4 of these missions linked together. And there's a couple of extra ones that you can do off to the side, I believe.
Yeah, bug hunt missions, right?
Right. Bug hunt and also rescue. So if
Okay.
any of your Marines get captured in one of the linked campaign missions, you can choose to go off on a
Attempt.
side path to try to go rescue them from the hive, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, very cool.
So what are your thoughts? Right off initially.
Right off initially, I was very, very excited, obviously, when I heard about this game, because as longtime listeners know, Michael and I are both ginormous fans of this game. And
Giddy even.
Giddy, absolutely. And we've already reviewed Aliens Bug Hunt. And in hindsight, I was okay with Bug Hunt at the time when we reviewed it, if you go back to our review. But then when I heard about Another Glorious Day in the Core and I saw the box cover, and when I'm like, oh, wow, this has the potential to shove Bug Hunt off to the side. It's like, step aside and I'll show you what a real Aliens game is all about. And so I think we'll get into the truth is a little bit more complicated than that. But yes, this is probably one of the most thematic alien games you can buy. So if you are an Aliens fan, you definitely, this is a must buy. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. I think so too. I mean, you're a fan of Aliens, go for it, check it out. It really kind of it brings the movie and the action that you crave to life from this movie, and it replaces what we really hoped for more of a thematic add-on to Aliens Bug Hunt. I believe was one of our major points about that game, and this has it in droves, really.
Oh, but, boy, in swarms.
In swarms, that's a better word. Yeah, absolutely.
The theme swarms all over you in this game,
whether you like it or not. So the components are a big part of this, of course, as we mentioned here. So you've got, and really it's kind of funny because there's 23 miniatures total in the box. 7 of them are Marines.
Oh.
You only have 16 aliens, but
only 16 aliens.
It feels like a lot more, which we'll get into here in a little bit. There's several cards. There's 121 total, covering equipment, endurance cards, character cards, mission cards. There's actually a little dock cardboard cutout thing that you can use to help organize your decks, which is a nice touch. There's double-sided game boards. It says 4. I thought there were more than that.
It's 4.
I'm mistaken. Yeah. It is 4.
You've got Hadley's Hope on one side, and then you've got
that's right.
The reactor on the other side.
Right. Absolutely. And then there's tons of tokens, dials, other things that you use to track mission information, statuses, things like that. So overall, I think the components are absolutely outstanding with a few misses. So, of course, as we've kind of hinted at here, you have to cut the minis from sprues, which is a pain. But it is what it is, right? I think it kept the cost of the game down by doing this. Some people are really big into DIY, cough. But not this kind of DIY, I don't think. It's a pain. The Marines are no problem. The aliens are, but they're still nice once you get them together. And then if you go to this, very nice. If you go to this game's Facebook page by the same name, you'll see people who play this game painted these miniatures beautifully, and it makes me feel sad because I don't ever do that. I don't know how to paint miniatures. I've just never taken the time to learn, but they look awesome. So, Martin, what are your thoughts on the components?
All right, strap in, folks. I got a lot to say about these miniatures. So, this is the first game I've ever encountered in 3+ years in board gaming that's required me to assemble minis. And furthermore, there was no indication on the box that the minis would require assembly. So, if you hadn't heard anything about this game, which I'd heard from the experiences of people who'd bought them before and posted on social media, and then I got a little bit taken aback. It's like, oh, it requires assembly, and everybody was like, oh, and those tales and this and that and whatever, and horror stories. And I'm like, well, I've never put together miniatures, so I was dreading it. And when you open it up, there's these 2 very sparse sheets of paper that says, here's instructions on how to put them together. And literally it's like how they physically go together. It doesn't tell you anything about like recommended cement or, paints types or what. It doesn't tell you anything like that. It assumes that you already have all this knowledge. Like it assumes that you have, not only are you a board gamer and an Aliens fan, but you also have a completely separate skill set, which is, and a miniatures, assembly aficionado and painter, right? If you want to go that route. Except I'm not. I'm totally not, and like you hinted at earlier, I do a lot of print and play games, but I've never put together minis. The last time I put together minis, my age was in the single digits, and it was a Revell Snap Tight model of the space shuttle. It was no glue, nice. So okay. So there's this assumption on the part of Gale Force 9 that you have the knowledge, equipment, supplies, and time to assemble these miniatures. And that may be a very good assumption for a lot of folks bought this game and opened it up and took it in stride. And was like, no problem. I've done this before. I'm a veteran Warhammer 40K tactical miniatures. I've got all the paints and I've got the cement and all the knowledge. And for folks like that, which probably a significant number of the folks who bought this game, no problem. In fact, as Michael said, probably an advantage, because my understanding is the advantage of sending you these minis disassembled and having you assemble them is they can send you much more detailed miniatures and higher quality, better sculpts than if they had already pre-assembled them. And they can pass on the cost savings to you. So from those standpoints, if you are somebody who knows how to put together miniatures, everything that I'm complaining about right now would be a plus for you. But I'm still going to complain about it, okay? So, Gale Force 9, don't assume that everyone who is interested in buying this game from you is also a miniatures, expert or enthusiast. I got impatient after spending over 20 minutes just assembling one alien mini. And I also didn't want to spend the $10 for the test store's model cement that Michael recommended to me, because Michael's, put together miniatures before. And so I used a glue gun, which I got an incredible amount of, ribbing for once I, disclosed that fact on social media. It's like all these miniatures folks getting up in arms going, how could you use a glue gun on these miniatures? You're such you uncultured swine, and I'm like, wow, okay. I actually, I had to block people. I actually had to block people on social media who wouldn't stop ribbing me. Like, it was getting too much. They like, I can take teasing on social media as much as the next person. That's fine, But when you crosses a line to like, unempathetic, hurtful, whatever, I just block you. So anyway,
right.
I'm almost done. I'm nearly done with my rant here. So I felt like I was wasting my time. It was going to take me a couple of hours to put together these miniatures, which are very nice. But I don't have a lot of time to play games. I have certain, blocks of time in my life where I'm like, I need to play this game because Michael and I are going to review it in the podcast. And I felt like I was wasting my time putting together these miniatures instead of getting to the game. So you know what? I set the miniatures aside and I use my print and play skills and my Cricut automatic paper cutter, and I made myself some alien standees. 16 alien standees that I made in the time it took me to put together one alien miniature. And I played the game that way. And it was perfectly fine. It was perfectly fine. So that causes me to question to Gale Force 9, what would it have cost you to just put some serviceable paper standees or cardstock standees in the box as an option for folks like me who don't want to put these minis together? Okay. And I know there are quite a number of people on social media who said, yeah, I'm interested in this game, but I'm intimidated by, the prospect of putting these minis together. So I'm not buying the game. So Gale Force 9, you're leaving money on the table by not, providing a standees option, or just like not requiring folks to just open the box and was like, here, put together these miniatures, which you don't tell people about on the box. And I realize I say this rant fully realizing that people are going to be listening to this podcast and feeling, Martin, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. This stuff happens all the time. And I got to say that may be true, but from my perspective, and I'm sure the perspective of other non-miniatures savvy board gamers, this would be a reason why they wouldn't want to get into this game, or potentially open the box and say, "Oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to sell it." You know what I mean? So why do that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. Michael? Am I off base here, or am I making a mountain out of a molehill?
No. Now, see, here's the thing. I think you're absolutely correct. And the fact that though we're looking at GF9 here, Gale Force 9, this is a big game board company. This is not some company that just created itself to publish one game or two games. They have the resources to give you options like that. Maybe they could have done a separate version of the game. If it costs more, then, pass it on to the consumers. But I think that there's people out there that would pay 60, 70, 80 bucks for a box with assembled miniatures, and ones that are maybe a little bit more sturdy than what they have. You're not off base at all. The one thing I will say though about the assembly portion is with the aliens, at least it gives you kind of a choice, right? So you can, well, not much of one, but you can put the arms on the aliens how you want. So you can make it look like they're charging or reaching out. You can also have a choice of heads as well. You can have a head with the little inner mouth coming out or not. So that's kind of cool that it gives you those choices. It's still a little weird when you are done and you've got like 8 alien heads sitting in your box, and what do I do with these things?
Right.
So, you got choices, but not very many. And you're absolutely correct. I think they should have given you another option for, just using cardboard tokens maybe, or maybe a deluxe version of the base game where everything's assembled and painted. Or better yet, something to store them in. But that's something I'll talk about later, I think.
Yeah. So that was my rant about the disassembled miniatures that require you to assemble them. I have a couple more critiques about the game itself. The game box itself, I was surprised how thin and flimsy this box is. It was lovingly and beautifully packed by Stone Valley Games when they sent it, but even as soon as they took it out, the side of the box basically ripped as soon as I opened it up, and then every time I open and close it, it rips some more. So it's very disappointing. And had I paid for this, I would be very, very upset. As a lot of us would be, because we like our boxes to be nice and sit on the shelf and not be ripped. And so got that. I don't know. Did you feel that the box was? I was taken aback by how thin this box felt. And
I did not. Did your shipping box have damage to it or not?
No, not at all.
Interesting.
And
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and as you know, Stone Valley basically mummifies these things inside of bubble wrap. Yeah. So there's no way that it could have So
I bet you it came from the publisher like that, because sometimes that gets past their QA. Obviously, especially a company like this, I imagine that's huge and ships out thousands of these things. They probably damaged the box and then shrink wrapped it. It's good. Shrink wrapped it. I say that because the only time this has ever happened to me in recent memory is Horrified, a game you are very familiar with. It arrived to me not even in shrink wrap, which really shocked me, and it was the cover was all ripped up, and that really bothered me. But that's a thing apparently that some publishers do now. They don't actually shrink wrap their games, which is really weird. But in this case it was, and I'm guessing that was totally on GF9 for doing that.
Yeah. I have another caveat about components that might be a deal breaker for some folks. For me, it was okay. It's not really that big of a deal, but I know that a lot of folks have a problem with movie stills. So when you're doing, games based on intellectual property like a movie, the perennial kind of debate is original art versus movie stills. And, I know that many people would have a problem with when we tell you that every single card in this game has a still from the film. I don't have a problem with that. I love this movie. And the stills, by and large, are well chosen, and they suit the theme. The other thing I'll mention, and is another great thing about the game, is that practically every card has a quotable quote This is one of the most quotable movies of all time, and they put the quote on the card, and then a still that really accompanies the moment that quote was delivered in the film. So it's part of this, like, it really brings the theme to life for me. But you might have a problem with it if you're like, no, I want original card art, more along the lines of Legendary Encounters, Aliens. So just know that going in, that if you have a problem with movie stills, you're not going to like this game because of that fact. But it is more expensive to commission, original art for an IP-based game as opposed to, licensing the movie stills and then selecting and using them. And it shows to me that whoever designed this game or designed the stills and put them together with the quotes, they love this movie just as much as we do because, they did a great job on that. But yeah, movie stills. So that's an issue. Michael, how did you feel about the movie stills?
I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I like those stills. I liked the art that they did in Bug Hunt, which I think was just illustrations, right? And we even talked about that, I believe. But I don't mind the movie stills. And as you said, they did choose them very well. But I do recognize there are some people that just probably aren't going to like that very much. And you're right about the IP. Maybe they've got an ongoing IP for the Aliens universe. I don't know, because they've churned out tons of extras and add-ons for this game. But yeah, just, it looked good, I think. I love seeing the characters again. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. All right. So that's pretty much all I have to say about components. Are we moving on to the next piece there, Michael?
So the rules, it would be nice if for once rules for a game that will certainly be beloved, a part of my, let me start that again. It would certainly be nice that for once that a game company would make rules for a game that I think would be a beloved part of my collection, would be clear and well organized. It would be really nice to not have to read something and go, huh? And not get it in the rules and hope that it makes sense in gameplay. And then it doesn't make any sense in gameplay either. So you have to go to BGG. Mm-hmm. You have to go to various sources. You have to watch videos. This stuff should be ready out of the box. I've played games since the late 70s. I've been through tons of different manuals. Avalon Hill days, man. We're talking war games that are like rule lawyer type books that should give you a law degree just for getting through them. But this kind of thing is just unforgivable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm making it sound like it's total doom. It's really not, but it's not good. The structure of this manual certainly needs a lot of improvement. It could use a summary. And Martin, I think you mentioned that to me. So and you're absolutely correct. I totally agree with that. There's a few other misses as well that would have vastly improved this experience and made it much easier to get into the game. So offhand, Martin, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will say that actually there is a summary on the back of the rulebook. There's a quick reference that talks to you about the Marine phase, the Alien phase, and the Finnish phase. So that's nice. But for a summary to work, they need to have first nailed the job of making every aspect clear to you, right? And they didn't here. So, and if you're the type like me who overthinks and gets hung up on just certain ambiguities in a rule book, and that causes you to stop. Like other people are able to take an ambiguity in stride and just kind of power on or move on, but I can't. If I have a question, like if you in this rule book say there's a difference between. So they refer to your Colonial Marines and Ripley and Newt as characters in general. But then within characters, there's heroes, as in those are controlled by, a player. Or if you're the solo player, the number that you've chosen as heroes, and the grunts. So each player board is two-sided. You have a hero side, which has more capabilities, slightly higher scores, more abilities, and then the grunt side, which is slightly lower score, fewer abilities, or no abilities, et cetera, et cetera. And the way the game is set up, you will go into each mission with a full complement of heroes and grunts all together. And, but in the rules, they make this distinction between heroes and grunts in setup before they explain what heroes and grunts are a couple of pages later. So that's annoying. You're going through setup
Yep.
and you're using terms that I'm not familiar with yet. They will become familiar in a couple of pages, but if you needed me to understand that during game setup, you should have explained that to me properly prior to game setup. It's those types of things in the rule book that's just like, it's taking your understanding for granted, or don't worry, they'll figure it out a couple of pages later. Well, that might work for some people, but it doesn't work for folks like me, number one. And also, number two is,
Right.
the whole convention of referring to the things as models rather than miniatures. Again, if you're like a long time miniatures, player or whatever, that might be no problem for you. But it's unfamiliar for people like me. And so this is a co-op game, but there's no dedicated solo rules. There's no part of correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, I didn't see any dedicated solo rules in this rule book, which means
I don't think so.
Right? Which means, I have questions like, how many heroes am I supposed to be controlling as the solo player, and how many are supposed to be grunts? And more importantly, at least they laid out the hero activation phase, but then they don't tell me specifically, and this is what the grunt activation phase looks like. Is it the same as the hero phase? Does it have the same steps? Is it more streamlined? The rule book completely glosses this over. So, and you're going to stop and you're going to go to BGG and you're going to look in the forums for clarifications, and it's going to get in the way of your game flow. And literally, this game was on my table for 2 whole days, where I was trying to decipher and get through ambiguous parts of the rulebook that didn't need to be there. Eventually, I learned it, and eventually I punched through, but the onboarding process was a heck of a lot longer and harder than it should have been. That's how I feel about the rules, Michael.
So how does this all translate into gameplay? So we can talk a little bit about that. It pretty much follows the same steps as the movie Aliens, at least as far as would be exciting for a board game. You don't get to play going into hypersleep or anything like that. So you start by loading up your characters, and the characters, I'll say characters just to represent all the figures, because I don't want to go into that you just talked about. It's absolutely correct. It's extremely confusing. Characters, heroes, grunts. Okay, who does? Anyway, I'll just say characters. So they start on the map depending on the mission. The very first one is for looking for Newt, which is kind of jarring. So for me, I would have liked something that captured the tension of entering the complex the first time. And This is something we talked about. That I talked about with some of the folks on the Facebook group page, and they were in agreement too. They think it's a good idea. Some kind of intro scenario to help you get the basics down, maybe where you're not really facing aliens. Maybe you do 1 or 2. It'll be a little bit different. It won't be the same, because when you're watching the movie the first time, you just don't have any clue what's going to happen. But if you've seen the movie 100 times like us, you know what's going to happen. It's not going to be anything too challenging. But they could have done something like that. But it's still kind of cool. It captures that tension and the feeling where you go through the steps of the turn. You've got your characters that move through these dark hallways that are very thematic for the complex. Very unlike Bug Hunt in that they're laid out like hallways, rooms, desks, tables, chairs. It looks like a colony, and that's really cool. You move. It's all. Movement is defined by grid, by blocks, by spaces, and you move through. You encounter things. Sometimes you've got places you got to interact with, like a computer terminal to get information. Right. All these objectives and everything are spelled out for each mission to tell you what to do when you set up the board. You take turns. The aliens take turns until all the Marines are eliminated or the mission's objectives are met. All the while, you're trying to manage a deck of endurance cards to ensure your Marines do not run out of resources to get things done, which is basically, I think the rules said it was like your ammo, power cells, stuff like that. Once your endurance deck is done, I should have mentioned that. I think the game is over as well.
That's true.
So, Martin, what are your thoughts on gameplay?
I will say this: for all the complaining I've done about like how difficult it was for me to acquire the rules and how much time it took, once I actually had punched through all of that, and once things got going, like you said, Michael, you get sucked in. You can't help but get sucked in if you're a fan of this movie, and you start feeling this kind of claustrophobic feeling that you're inside Hadley's Hope, these kind of dark hallways, and then there's fearsome xenomorphs hiding in the shadows, and then line of sight is a mechanism in this game, right? So it could very well have aliens that spawn in a place, but then you're quickly you're trying to draw straight lines from your character to that. Do they have line of sight? Are they still a blip, or are they now revealed? And then you have to replace them with a miniature or a standee or whatever. And so that's very, very cool. And then I also like the mechanism of to be able to perform. So you have this shared endurance deck between all the characters, like you pointed out, and it's got this mechanism where, which really, if you want to perform any action, there is always a cost of endurance cards that you have to exhaust or discard, which is even worse, right? Because when you discard an endurance card, it's out of the game effectively for the rest of the scenario. There's a mechanism where you potentially could get a few of those back if you're playing campaign or whatever. Or you could exhaust them, which means that they could potentially, they're used up for now, which now lowers your endurance deck, but potentially you can do things during the game like rest or other card effects that could put those back into your draw deck of insurance. So I like that. I need to pay. So the endurance deck is basically your life meter, and I have to give up some of my team's life to be able to perform actions. So for example, you've got a flamethrower. When I was playing, my character Frost had the flamethrower. Which I found kind of cool. His nickname is Frosty, but he's got a flamethrower, But
right.
But every time it's an amazing weapon, and it can kill a lot of aliens in line of sight. But every time you want to use it, there's a tough decision where you have to give up 3 endurance cards, which is a lot. If you want to fire a pulse rifle, you only have to give up 1 endurance card. So there's that. And also, I love the mechanisms for using each weapon are very thematic. Like, for example, the pulse rifle, if you start using it and you hit, you can just keep on going. And as long as you keep on hitting, you continue firing, which is very thematic to the movie and how they were using pulse rifles in the movie, right? So right. You only stop when you miss. So all of these things kind of really tend to suck you into the theme of it, and you're just having a lot of fun, So, as you said, the first mission is you got to find Newt. So I sent Hudson, who's got the highest tech score, to the computer terminal, and that's very true to the film. Hudson was the guy with the who ran the bypass to open the airlock to Hadley's Hope, right? And but then while he was doing that, I made as it turns out, the tactical mistake of splitting up the squad. 2 of you go to the computer. The rest of you go here, where we think, the section where Newt is hiding. And when Hudson, finally had a successful roll, a successful tech skill check, right? And he found where Newt was hiding. We're like, okay, we go in. Meanwhile, all these aliens spawned and cut off the two splinters of the squad from each other, and then you're like, all of a sudden you're in this bad tactical position where it's like, oh boy, we're in it now. We're in the I'm not going to say the bad word on the air, but we're in it now. And so this moments like that, right. It was kind of cool because it was similar to, but kind of a remix of what actually happened in the movie. So you have this opportunity to play out the same scenario, but in a different and unique way. The one last thing I'll say about this is this might be sort of a small spoiler, but if you're familiar with the film, there's a character named Gorman, Lieutenant Gorman, right? Everybody's favorite, who his character arc starts out as he's kind of an officious, kind of legalistic jerk who tries to do things by the book, and then the guys don't like him. The squad doesn't like him, which is, par for the course. The grunts always complain about the lieutenant, blah, blah, blah. But he has a redemption at the end of the film where he sacrifices his life so that the rest of the squad could live. And again, I'm not going to say the word on the air, but the title of that card that comes out is "You always were a bleep Gorman," right? Vasquez's famous line.
Yep.
This card comes out, and Gorman gets it in my play. And Gorman actually got to use it to blow a path. So there was like a wall of a swarm of aliens, and it all looked lost. And literally, Gorman just rushes up there and triggers off a grenade and wipes out all of them, and then gave us a path to the exit, which was an amazing moment. Right, just super cool if you're a fan of the the movie, right? And so
Absolutely.
So it's moments like this that really save this game, and it somehow gets you immersed in the theme almost from the get-go once you figure out how to start playing it.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting to note. I mean, these characters are just like they are in the game. And when something like that happens where you can match up a card with the actual character, it just is so cool because you're reliving the movie basically.
Yeah.
And I can't really talk about the expansions because we don't have those, but I can say I've read a little bit about them. There's more characters that you can add to the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Carter Burke being one of them, which I think is awesome. I would love to see a game with his useless self being in there. It's there's so many options for this game. I think that really saves it, as Martin said too. The rules are a slog. Once you get through them, though, the gameplay is great. It's really what we were wanting out of Bug Hunt.
Yeah.
I don't want to disparage Bug Hunt at all. It's a good game on its own merit, but that theme that we just wanted more.
Yep.
And this really does that.
Absolutely.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. So we'll start with the good, as we always do. And as Martin and I have both said, and we totally agree on, thematic, absolutely thematic. This is exactly what we missed in Bug Hunt. As I said, it's go listen to that podcast if you'd like. I mean, we did like it. It just had some misses that this one makes up for, I think. Not the same company, though, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Upper Deck does that one, I believe.
That's right.
But in this case, it's a really fun thematic game. As I said, once you figure the rules out, it flows easily. The action is very tense. Card draws are tense, determining how you're going to use your resources, where you're going to position your Marines, whether or not you should split up your squad. Usually that's a bad thing because they tend to spawn in the worst possible places.
I found that out.
Even though they're marked on the map, they're going to come from one of these spots, but you don't know which one, know, and yeah, hey, you two go over there and do this. And that's over by spawn point 1. So guess where they get spawned? Yep. Pretty much.
Oh yeah.
So that adds to the tension though. It adds to the fun, the not knowing what's going to happen. It's so enjoyable.
Yep.
Martin, how about you?
For the goods, for me, I agree with you. It's a super, super thematic aliens game. And that's really the saving grace of this game. There's also the campaign play. Bug Hunt did not have campaign play. I don't think, right? So this one has a campaign where you can play, and it's got side missions, and it's got one shots, and you have the option of play them just as a one shot, or as a series of missions put together. And there's rules in the rule book for how to manage that. Like when you, what happens in mission 1 and whoever dies in mission 1, that carries over to mission 2, which really helps with the thematic immersion. So if, Frost is no longer, Frost bought it in mission 1, Frost is not going to magically respawn in mission 2 if you're playing campaign play. So that's very cool too. And then the rules make the game seem more complex and heavy than it really is, which is why I said at the start when we were talking about the 2.78 out of 5 complexity score, I don't buy that. I think that's primarily because the rules make it seem, heavier than it is. It's actually a pretty light and fast-paced moving game. if you know what you're doing. So I think it's actually not like some folks might go into this expecting like some sort of tactical miniatures, like, I don't think it is. I think it's actually just a light dungeon crawl in the Aliens universe. So if that sounds like up your alley, then this game is for you.
Now for the bad part. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we've discussed these many times, and I won't go repeating what we've said. So the rules, obviously, they need some work desperately. The figure assembly, as we both said, the Marines, they're not so bad. They're not that hard to put together. I had a really hard time, though, with Gorman's head because it's so tiny and it has to
Yes.
face a certain way. And they really are well engineered, though, because they fit together well. Usually, sometimes you come across minis that just don't quite work right, but they fit well. Once you get it to just sit the right way,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an incredible pain to get it that way, that one hit. But that's just probably me. I don't assemble them that often. I've done it before a few times, but it's not certainly something I would ever choose to want to do in a game. The aliens, entirely different story. 4 sprues, tiny arms, heads, tails, bodies, all thin plastic that are extremely fragile. When you get them together, all of the figures, the Marines are pretty solid. They feel like a true mini. They've got weight to them. They've got thickness to them. They feel like a good mini. But the aliens feel like grandma's crystal collection. It's just like you just barely them, and you don't want to hold them the wrong way or they might break. And the part of the complaint I have with that is having to add a penny to the bottom of the alien figures. Not that I have a penny or a problem using a penny to do
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just that I had to do it in the
Right.
first place. To add weight to it, so it gives it some substance on the table.
Right.
There's also no solid storage solution for these minis. So mine right now, I very carefully stored my box. There's room in the box. There's plenty of room in the box to put these in, but there's no insert. So
Right.
I just have them standing in the box with the components on top. They're not putting weight on it. They're just the way there is an insert, but it's not for the minis at all.
Right.
So all my minis are just kind of standing in there free form, and I hate that.
Yeah.
I would have preferred have an extra $5 to add an insert of some kind that you can do this with. Now I recognize that some of the minis of the aliens minis are a little bit different in that their hands, you move them, you place them where you want to when you build it.
Right.
But there's no reason why you couldn't do some kind of generic insert, and that really bugged me. So Martin, how about you? What are your bets?
It bugged you, no pun intended.
Yeah, well, no pun intended, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. So I won't belabor all of the facts, all of the complaints that I've had so far. Miniatures assembly with no standees option was a big miss, in my opinion. The rules lack level of detail and they need extensive clarification on BGG. And there's no dedicated solo rules. So it can take some folks a while to become familiar enough to really enjoy what turns out to be a light, fast, smooth flowing game. So it's a super light game. Folks expecting a deep tactical miniatures game will likely be disappointed with this one. Better to think of this game as a light dungeon crawl in the Aliens universe. The box is thin and flimsy and easily broken. Movie stills rather than original card art. Again, not really a major problem for me, but definitely I know for some folks that might be a deal breaker. And there's also a good deal of randomness in this game. Your difficulty or fun factor in each scenario is going to greatly depend on exactly where the aliens spawn. If they spawn in between the path of your squad and the exit point, you're going to have a fun time. Hard time, fun time. If they spawn somewhere in a far-flung corner of the map, then potentially you could get very close to the exit before you actually engage the aliens. And so there's randomness there. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep. Now for the ugly. I don't really have any ugly points. I think the bad speak for themselves for that. But other than the fact that I want the expansions, all of them, even if I got to assemble more freaking aliens, I'm still fine with that. But when you don't have the time or the money to buy all of them, I think there's like 5 or 6 expansions, including extra aliens and other things.
yeah.
So, Martin, how about you? Do you have any uglies?
No ugly in my part, apart from the fact that this game does not fulfill its promise of being the best Aliens game out there. I think, even though it's really, really good, it's a really good Aliens, thematic Aliens experience, but probably the honor still belongs to Legendary Encounters Aliens, which is a deck building game. Probably one of the better, if not the best, deck building game systems out there for my money. And all original card art. And you have the ability to play not just Aliens, but all Aliens movies. So that's quite an accomplishment there.
That's 4 movies, right? Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien. Oh gosh, I can't remember the fourth
Alien
name.
versus Predator, or I don't know.
Yeah. No, it was the anyway. But
anyway, there's 4 movies that you can play. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I had that game, but I ended up trading it away because it was just too much. It was so much to it, but that's not a bad thing. It's just it's an awesome, fun game. I just prefer Firefly or something else along those lines.
All right.
So, stomp discussion.
Mm-hmm.
If it weren't for the rules, and I would say yes. I mean, there's other issues here, but there's just too many negatives. So, Martin, how about you?
Yeah, I can't give it the stomp. Yeah, no stomp for me as well. Rules, miniatures assembly, movie stills instead of original game art. Bottom line, if you're a fan of Aliens, then you're buying this game. I mean, there's just no question. It is one of the most thematic games about aliens on the market. But if you're looking for a deep, satisfying tactical miniatures game, this game is probably too light to satisfy you. If you want a light soloable dungeon crawl and you're curious about the Aliens IP, you might like this too. Just know going in that it's not a really complex game. But yeah, it's really meant for Aliens fans. And for Aliens fans, we're going to overlook all of the flaws, and it's just going to be a slam dunk for us.
Yep, pretty much, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, fanfare music, if I've got it. The first ever, well, I don't want to say it's the first ever because I don't know if Brandon and them ever gave one away or not. But we've got a game giveaway for you.
Yeah.
Did they? Woo! Okay. Well, first one for Martin and Michael.
That's right.
So what we got up for grabs are not 1, but 2 copies of Warp's Edge.
Woo!
I have the woohoo is right. You guys loved it. Me, I'm good with it. I'm good with giving it away.
I gave it the stomp, okay?
Yes, you did. And everybody can blame Michael. He doesn't like anything. Except maybe Life cereal. But anyway, if you get that reference, I feel sorry for you.
Ooh, wow.
That's you're just as old as I am, is all I'm saying. So 2 copies, as I said. One is the retail version that Stone Valley Games generously provided to me. I'm willing to give that to a lucky listener who would get some use out of that or would enjoy playing it, because I probably never will again. No offense, but hey, you love it? Go for it, man. It's a great game in that regard. The other is a Kickstarter version that I ended up trading for with a local guy here. And it has upgraded counters. As I talked about in the podcast, it's got extra cards, extra bad guys,
nice.
And it's got a neoprene mat as well.
A nice. I love me some neoprene play mats.
Yeah, I'm not used to it. I think it's the first one I've ever had, and I'm like, ooh, this is kind of cool. So this is what Kickstarter is all about, huh? Getting these extra cool things, but there's no point for me to hang on to this one either. So I might as well trade this off as well. So, given that information, how do you enter? Well, you're going to go over to Stone Valley Games website. I don't know what the link is offhand, so I can't speak to it, but it is there, and we'll put it in the show notes.
Right.
So go check that out. Click on it. Do what you got to do over there. The details will be on that page, but I can say that this giveaway will only be good for a couple of weeks, or we're just saying 1 week, because we're going to be releasing our next episode pretty quickly after this one.
Right. We will announce the 2 lucky winners when our next episode airs.
There you go. All right. And I think we'll probably draw that name the night before, maybe. We'll see how that works out. But just head over there, give Stone Valley Games a visit, check out their site, enter into the contest, and one of these 2 copies will be yours. And
nice.
I believe it's open to anybody, right? Anybody in the world will ship wherever. Is
I
that how that works? We've
I
got
don't.
some listeners that don't live in the States, but
Will I think you're right. I think I do remember. I do recall Eric an email thread where Eric said that it would be open to
okay.
anybody. Yeah.
Okay. I
And
thought so. I just wanted to be sure.
yeah, and I just want to say once again, big thanks to Eric of Stone Valley Games for setting up the website for this to support this
Yes.
giveaway,
Yes.
and just awesome partnership there.
Absolutely. And we will actually have more of these in the future. We won't say when or which games, but we are planning to do more of these. So your support is much appreciated, and this is our one way of giving back to you for doing that. So thank you guys. So now that wraps up episode 74 of the Solosaurus podcast. We are part of the Dice Tower Network, of course. And for even more Solosaurus, you can join our post-show discussions and other shenanigans on Facebook, maybe on Instagram if we ever get around to actually getting on Instagram. We still get followers. I see the email. I do check the email maybe once every couple of weeks. And there were a couple of emails in the inbox that I responded to. If you guys write us, just know that you'll probably get quicker response if you post to our Facebook page. So I recommend please go to the Solosaurus Facebook page and like it, join it, and if you post something there, I guarantee you Martin and I will see it within a day. If you put it in an email in, we probably won't see it for a couple of weeks. It's just how it works, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, you can also reach out to us through Geek Mail on Board Game Geek if you are Board Game Geek savvy. If you are interested in getting the Solosaurus micro badge, just send me a Geek Mail at Dr. Henry Armitage. That's Dr. Henry Armitage. That's my handle on Board Game Geek. And I will spot you the Geek Gold so that you can get your very own shiny Solosaurus micro badge. Or if you just have feedback for the show, or questions or suggestions for games for us to cover in the future, that's another way to get to us. And I do check my Geek Mail several times a day.
Very good. Very sweet. I just got my Solosaurus micro badge about a week ago.
Nice.
I had Geek Gold. I didn't realize I had plenty of Geek Gold. I guess it accumulates because I never spend it on badges. And I'm like, I think I'll go ahead and buy this one. I probably should. So thank you for doing that, Martin. That's very generous. And thanks again, of course, to Stone Valley Games for being our sponsor. And we also, we want to thank them for just sending us review copies and being supportive and providing us with the link the link to host this giveaway as well. As always, if there's any particular games you'd like us to take a look at, because what was the gentleman's name that told us about this one? I forget his name, and that's on me. I should have looked it up before.
I think it was Ben.
I think so.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It was. Yeah. So thank you to Ben for doing that, because that game had been on my radar, Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Court, and I just didn't think about it until, hey, wait a second, you're right. Yeah, we need to look that up. So anything, let us know. You can drop us an email, but as I said, Facebook page probably works a lot quicker, or just engage us on social media, wherever you might see us. So again, I'm Michael Eckenfels.
I'm Martin Gonzalez.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Solosaurus podcast.